I am 87 years old, and I want to tell you about the year I learned to sit down before I spoke. Bad news came to my house 4 times in 14 months. A doctor's word, a letter I opened standing up, a telephone call at 10 at night, and one morning where nothing arrived at all, except the plain understanding that my hands were not going to get better. Every single time I did the same thing. I opened my mouth too soon. So I sat at my kitchen table and counted the ways I had done it, and there were 9. I wrote down every one. I did not feel ashamed, and I did not feel proud. I felt honest, maybe for the first time in years. So come and sit with me a while. Pull that chair up close, over by the stove. I am not telling you to keep secrets from the people who love you. I am not telling you to swallow your fear until it hardens into something in your chest. I am not telling you to be a stone in a house of warm bodies. What I am telling you is this. After 65, the quiet hour between the moment news arrives and the moment you open your mouth is one of the most important hours you have left. Do you know the hour I'm talking about? I threw mine away nearly every time. My grandmother had one saying she used more than any other, and I did not understand it until I was past 80. She said, "When the wind takes the roof off, you do not run out into the storm to tell the neighbors. You sit down under whatever is left, and you wait until you can see how much of the house is still standing." She was not talking about roofs. Do you understand what she was really telling me? She was telling me that news arrives only halfway. The second half comes later, in the quiet, when the shaking settles, and the true size of the thing finally shows itself. A man who speaks between the two halves is not telling anybody the truth. He is telling them his fright. And fright does not leave a person when it is spoken. It only makes copies of itself in everyone listening. That is the whole teaching. Everything after this is just me admitting the 9 ways I broke it. So here is the first confession, and it is the one I made the most often. I telephoned my family within the hour. A doctor said the word shadow to me on a Tuesday afternoon. Before I had my coat buttoned in the parking lot, I was calling my daughter Ruth Ann at her work. By supper, 11 people knew. My sister was already saying my name in a low voice to her husband. Ruth Ann had cried in a supply closet and pulled out the road map. And what had I actually told them? Nothing. I had handed 11 people one word. 3 weeks later, that shadow came back as an old scar from a pneumonia I had in 1971. My grandfather used to say a frightened man should walk out to the fence line before he walks up to the house. Now I let one sunrise stand between the news and the telephone. Before I go on, let me set one small thing down beside you. I made a little collection, and I call it the native way. Everything my grandmother taught me about waiting, the roof, the storm, the quiet hour, is gathered in there, and the link for it sits down in the description below this video. No pressure at all. I am sitting right here with you tonight, whether you ever open it or not. And I want to say one more thing before the list goes on. Not one of these 9 confessions is about being weak. Every one of them is about being fast. Do you know the difference? A weak man cannot carry the news. A fast man carries it straight out the door and drops it on somebody else's kitchen floor before he has even looked at it himself. Now come back to the fire with me, because the second confession is the one that took the most from me, and until tonight I have never said it out loud to anybody but my wife. The second confession is this. I made a large decision inside the first 3 days. My hands began to shake that fall, bad enough that the coffee moved in the cup. On the 3rd day, I decided I was done driving. I put the truck keys in my nephew Delmar's hand on a Sunday, and by Wednesday the truck was sitting in his yard, and I was standing at my kitchen window looking at the empty place where it used to be. Do you know what the shaking turned out to be? 6 months later, a different doctor looked at the pills I take at night, changed one of them, and the shaking stopped like somebody had shut off a faucet. The shaking was never mine. The decision was. My grandmother used to say you can measure a field twice if you want, but you had better measure it in daylight. Shock is lamplight. Everything looks final in it. Now I let 3 sunrises pass before I decide anything that cannot be undone. If it is still the right thing on the 3rd morning, it will still be the right thing on the 4th. The 3rd confession. I answered a doctor with a plan instead of a question. I have done this in 3 different offices. The man in the white coat says a long sentence with 2 words in it I have never heard before, and my scared mouth starts arranging things. Who will drive me? What I will sell? Which winter I ought to move closer to town? I walked out of that office with a whole plan and not one piece of information. Do you know what I never once asked? What does that word mean? How sure are you? What happens if we wait and look again in 90 days? My grandfather said a man cannot mend a fence he has not walked. Now I carry a small spiral notebook in my shirt pocket, and I do not let myself say a single sentence about my own life in that room until I have asked 3 questions and written the answers down, where my fear cannot go back and revise them later. The 4th confession is the one I would take back before any of the others. I said the worst possible version out loud where a child could hear it. My grandson Emmett was 9, sitting at my table with a bowl of cereal, and I said to his mother over his head, "The way we do, as if a boy's ears switch off while he is eating. Well, I suppose this is how it ends for me." I did not even believe it. It was just the biggest sentence available, and my mouth reached for it. Do you know what a 9-year-old does with a sentence like that? He stops eating, right? He asks his mother in the car whether Grandpa is going to be gone by Christmas. My grandmother used to say, a child's ear is a wet field. Whatever you drop in, it comes up in the spring. Now I say only the part I actually know. The doctor saw something. He does not know yet what it is. That is the truth, and the truth is small enough for a child to hold. The 5th and the 6th confessions belong together, because they are both about the shape of the telling and not about the news at all. The 5th. I brought bad news to people at the wrong hour. I told my wife Alma about that letter at 10 minutes to 11 at night, standing in the bedroom doorway with the hall light behind me, and then I lay down beside her and went to sleep, and she did not sleep until 4. Bad news at bedtime is not sharing. It is unloading. The 6th. I repeated it. In 1 week I told that shadow story 11 times, to the man at the feed store, to 2 neighbors, to a cousin who had telephoned about something else entirely. And what does a story get out of being told 11 times? Every telling wore the doubt off of it, the way a creek wears a stone. By the 11th time, they think they might see something had turned into they found something. My grandmother said a story told too many times keeps only its sharpest edge. Now I tell it twice. Once to Alma in the morning, with the whole day still in front of us, and once to one person who will not carry it any further. The 7th confession. I made promises inside the shock. In the first hour after that doctor's word, I told my son I would never drive at night again. I told Alma I would never go up on the ladder, never take the boat out alone, never go back to the lake in September. 4 big vows, all of them made by a frightened man in a parking lot. Then the news turned out to be nothing, and there I stood holding 4 promises I did not mean and could not honorably break. Do you know what that does to a family? They stop believing the shape of your words. They learn to wait out your first hour. My grandmother used to say you should never make a promise in a room you have only just walked into. Now I make no vows for 7 days. Not to my family, not to God, not to myself. Fear writes beautiful promises, and fear never has to keep a single one. The 8th confession. I took somebody else's bad news and made it about me. Wendell from down the road came over on a Thursday to tell me his wife's diagnosis. He got maybe 4 sentences out. By the 5th, I was talking about my sister in 1988. The same word, the same treatments, how it went for her. He nodded. He drank his coffee. He left 20 minutes early and he did not come back for a long while, and I do not blame him. What did that man need from me? Not a story. He needed a room where his own news could be the only news in it. My grandfather said the kindest thing you can hand a grieving man is his own silence back. Now, when somebody brings me hard news, I sit in it with them, and I keep my history in my pocket. If they ask for it, it is right there. If they do not, it stays. And here is the 9th confession, the one I am least proud of, the one I have been walking toward this whole time. I let my own bad news stay bigger than it was, because it brought my daughter to my door on Sundays. That is a hard sentence for an old man to say out loud. While the shadow was still a shadow, the telephone rang every evening. Ruth Ann drove out every Sunday. My son sent word he had not sent in 2 years. There were pies on my porch from women I had not spoken with since Alma's church stopped meeting. And do you know how quiet a house gets when the news turns out to be nothing? When that picture came back clean, I did not tell everybody right away. I let it sit a few days. I told myself I was waiting to be certain. I was not waiting to be certain. I was waiting for one more Sunday. My grandmother used to say that a starving man will eat anything, and loneliness is a kind of starving. Now I ask plainly, come Sunday because I want to see your face. That sentence is harder to say than any diagnosis, and it is the only honest one I have. Now let me say the thing I most want you to carry out of this house tonight. Naming those 9 was not the same as hating myself for them. It took me the better part of that winter to understand the difference, and I would like to hand it to you already understood. A man who speaks too soon is not a bad man. Speaking too soon is a thing a person does. It is not a thing a person is. Do you hear the difference? Those are 2 entirely different animals, and if you put them in the same pen, you will never get any work done, because a man who believes he is the problem has nothing left to repair. He can only apologize, and apologizing is not repair. I am not a coward with a telephone in his hand. I am a man who learned back in a hard year I do not need to describe to you that saying the fear out loud gets it out of my chest faster. That is all it ever was. It worked when I was 30. It stopped working when the news got heavier and the people around me got older and had less room left to carry my share of it. So I did not sit down at that table to sentence myself. I sat down to see the shape of a habit, the way you walk a fence line in daylight and mark the posts that lean. A leaning post is not a moral failure. It is a post. You go back out to it with a shovel. 9 leaning posts. That is all that list ever was. So let me gather this up for you now, the way my grandmother gathered the ends of her shawl before she stood to leave a room. 9. I called the family within the hour. I decided something large inside 3 days. I answered a doctor with a plan instead of a question. I said the worst version where a child could hear it. I told it at the wrong hour of the night, and then I told it 11 times until the maybe wore off of it. I made promises in a parking lot. I made another man's bad news into my own story. And I let my own trouble stay big because it kept the driveway busy on Sundays. Now turn those around, gently, and hold them up against your own life. When the last hard word came to your house, how long was it before you reached for the telephone? Did you decide anything that first week that you cannot undo now? Is there a child in your family carrying a sentence you said over their head? How many times have you told it? What did you swear to in that first hour? And are you still holding it? And when your neighbor's turn came, did you give them the room or did you fill it up with yourself? I am not asking to accuse you. I am asking because nobody ever thought to ask me. I know what some of you are asking right now because I asked it at that table with the pencil still in my hand. Is it too late for me? Listen, I am 87. My hands still shake a little, even on the good pills. I cannot promise you that anything gets restored, or that anybody comes back, or how long any of it takes. I would not insult you with that. But here is what the years did not take. You can still notice one habit. And when the next hard word comes to your door, and it comes to all of us, you can still make one ordinary choice. You can sit down for 1 hour before you speak. That is all I have, and I still have it at 87. I would like to hear from you now. Of those 9, tell me which number landed closest to home, which one you recognized before I had finished saying it. Put it down in the comments where I can find it. I read every one of them, late, with my coffee going cold beside me. And if this hour by the stove did you any good at all, come back and sit with me again tomorrow. There is a chair here and it is not going anywhere, and neither am I. Go gently tonight.